Well, we'd like to welcome all of you to another Sunday class from the BYU Library Family History Center in Provo, Utah. We are going to be talking today about artificial intelligence, which is now pretty well known as AI, and some of the other features, particularly where they impact on family search and how family search has already implemented a number of these different, let's call them genealogical revolutionary ideas and concepts. So we'll get right into it. The first thing to kind of understand about the records on Family Search. Family Search has billions of records. Most of these records are handwritten, and until recently, only a small percentage of the records have been indexed. We've been ballparking the number of indexed records as opposed to the number of unindexed records at about 25% of the records being indexed. Anything about that would be pre-AI introduction and the things that are going on with artificial intelligence. The records on Family Search are spread across the website, and we have some training on our BYU website and on the BYU YouTube channel talking about all of the different places where the records are sort of in different categories and different levels of being indexed or not indexed or cataloged. And there is a new catalog on Family Search recently. The catalog is slowly being replaced across the entire Family Search community, and it is up to date. The old catalog was out of date by more than 2 years. And so now this new catalog is up to date. It's going to have a lot more information in it, and it's well worth your time to go back and do some searches if you haven't searched on some of your open questions in the past. Now, we need to understand that the volunteer indexers have done a fabulous job of indexing records, but the manual indexing is relatively slow and tedious. And in fact, it's not nearly as fast as it is for the people who are digitizing the records, missionaries for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and others who are involved in the indexing around the world. And there's always a number of cameras out there going. And if you have 300 and plus cameras going around the world, digitizing day after day after day in various projects, there really, no matter how many people were, well, we could have theoretically had enough people to do the indexing all the time. But the problem, of course, was that never got caught up, and it was always slipping slowly behind. And we were not getting a lot of the records indexed. So Family Search started a section of their website called the Images section. And the Images section under the Search tab is the pile of all the records that weren't cataloged and weren't indexed. And if indexing was slow, cataloging is even slower, usually. And so these are the kinds of things that we're confronted with. Now, if you want to think about it, we think of sometimes of these developments as being brand new type things. Well, handwriting recognition has been a major goal for over 75 years. It was used by the U.S. Postal Service. It's been used by mail order people. It's been used by a lot of different people for a long time, doing various kinds of handwriting recognition. The problem, I guess the challenge was not not getting the computers to recognize handwriting per se, but if you're only recognizing envelopes from the United States and you're pulling all the ones that they can't read, then that's not a very full topic, very full formed process, especially for handwriting in old documents. And this is an example. Here's an old German document. The handwriting is fairly good. It would be a challenge for most people without some experience and training to be able to read these documents. The question is whether or not the documents could be read by the computer. And that was the challenge. And over the past few years, FamilySearch and others have been putting in all the different kinds of records and documents that they can. Now, the first big breakthrough in all this, and it happened only a couple of years ago, was when Ancestry.com was using their development of handwriting recognition and coupled with FamilySearch began to transcribe all the handwriting in the 1950 U.S. federal census. Okay, so FamilySearch and Ancestry got together. Ancestry in the previous census, in 1940 census, had taken like 6 months. It took their processing the census records 6 months in order to be completely processed, all the census registers across the whole United States. Well, in the 1950 census, when using the new handwriting technology that had matured in that time difference, they took 6 hours. So it took 6 hours to completely transcribe the handwriting in all of the census records. Then they spent about the next 6 months with FamilySearch's assistance reviewing the census records for mistakes or incorrect transcriptions by the AI program. Well, what happened with the AI program is that by doing that, it made the program better. So every time we go through one of these processes, the programs improve in their ability. The original breakthrough, even before the census, came when competitions in Europe and around the world for AI in reading old transcripts were able to read the old German black letter script, the handwriting script, which is among the more difficult to read. And with doing it at above 90% accuracy, 90, 95, even closer to 97% accuracy. Now, handwriting recognition runs higher than any human expert on a given document. The accuracy is such. And the time frame is what's the crucial thing here. It takes only a few seconds for the AI programs to transcribe a handwritten document when it can take hours for a human to do the same transcription. So what's this other part of it? The other part of this, you have kind of different technologies here getting to be extremely useful over a period of time. The next one that we run into is called full text search. Well, full text search is what it is. It's a technique that finds any specific information within a large amount of text. It's not keyword matching. It's not using an index. It's not doing an index search. It looks through the entire document for any specified input that you would like to do. So let me give an example. It was introduced by IBM back in the 1960s. This is when computers were just becoming useful to the point of replacing other ways of doing things around the communities. So if we were looking at a full text search of a deed, the deed would have lots of words in it. If you were indexing that, you would choose just a few words, and most deed indexes are called grantor grantee indexes. That means the seller and the buyer of the property, or the person that owned it to the person who gets it given to them or sold to them. And that's all. So all you would get out of a deed index is 2 names. And that's the common way of doing indexing across the world. But when you get into full text indexing, that means that you can specify within the document any parameters that you want. You can actually search every single word, but you'd be searching a lot of ands, thes, and things like that, which probably aren't helpful. But on the other hand, if you have what are called filters and you filter that down and you say, I'm going to look for only a certain type of entry in these records. I want to know the people's names. I want to recognize the names. I want it to recognize dates. I want it to recognize places. I want it to recognize some other things. In other words, you can list all the different types of information you want it to recognize. Full text search will then go through and pull up all that information at the same time out of thousands of documents. So when you do a search, it's like a Google search on full text search. You may get 1,000 or 2,000 or 10,000 or more documents, but the documents that have the most relevancy, that have the most, let's call it correspondence to your search terms, are the ones that come up first. So then you have a list and you can go down through the list and pick out documents. And the advantage of this is that you will all of a sudden begin to get a lot more documents than you would ever have thought possible. Things will just come up that you would never have looked for and you would never have found. Okay, so let's move on. At the time of this presentation, and I have to kind of say that over and over again because just because I'm talking right now and talking about what goes on and how it works, that doesn't mean it's not going to change next week or next year. In the last month, and particularly in the last couple of weeks, there's been some tremendous changes in AI. And all I can say is it's hard to even keep up when you're looking on it and working on it every day because it really does change. And who's in the lead and who does what. There was a thing about Chinese AI getting ahead of everybody, and then somebody in Washington, in the United States, said, oh, well, we just beat them by a lot. And then the next week, Google came out with a huge upgrade. And in other words, you just have to kind of be aware of the fact that this is going to keep changing and becoming more useful and more accurate. And this is where it is. It's expand your search with full text. Now, there's another one next to it that says find help with AI search. I'm not going to talk about that, but it's helpful because it's using an AI search to search the FamilySearch website. And if you've ever tried to find things on the FamilySearch website, you might want to come here and try this because this will help you immensely in finding what you're looking for in various types of things, and also finding out if they are still on the website or not on the website. Okay. When we get here, we're here to do a full text search. And the full text search, you could search by start in searching by names, places, year ranges, apparently by DGS or image group number, which is part of the film numbers on FamilySearch. Keywords, that's very possible that keywords would be helpful, but you're going to need to use some of the advanced search tips down below if you want to make sure that you're going to get that same information. And keywords are usually things that are established by cataloging in the sense, or by indexing or this in another sense. And so using the keywords, you can try that. And in any place you do here, my suggestion is when you're starting to do searches like this using full text, is just do it. Just start putting in different names. And I'll start showing you some ways to do the variations and things like that. So if you browse the collections, you're going to get an idea, and it's over in the corner. So first of all, this is your main section. But down here, give you an idea of what records have been processed by the full text search. Here you can put in whatever country, whatever place that you want to look at records across the United States and, in the West Coast and California, Arizona, over to the East Coast, and Massachusetts, New York, and Florida and Texas and North Dakota, all over. You can put in what you want, and then you'll see if any of records have been processed. And if they have been, then they're available there to search. So you could look at those collections and those single collections and do a search on that collection. And then when you're browsing all the collections, it also gives you an idea of how many collections are being processed. And so this is the story. So this is kind of the overall explanation of it. With handwriting recognition and optical character recognition software, okay, one is for handwriting, the other is for text. And we've had optical OCR, optical character recognition, that's been very high quality for probably 10 or years or more. We can convert an image of text into a machine-readable text format, giving you the ability to search everything in the records before they're even indexed. Now, that's the key there. And that's before they're indexed, which means they don't need to be indexed because you're going to find everything before you don't ever need to be indexed. So indexing, in a sense, the manual indexing that's going on is going to be not so prevalent. And as a matter of fact, I've tried to get projects in indexing now over the last few months occasionally, and there has never been anything available in any language, any place for me. So my selection now, and the emphasis on the full text search was made additionally, and this is since last year for RootsText, so it's now been a full year, was that they were going to be doing Latin America and English records, so Spanish language and English language records. Now that's branched out, and if you'll see as you go in and look at browse the collections, you'll see there's lots of languages and lots of time frames that are being covered. So let's say we're going to start our search. Now here's the key to how this all works and how you can learn how to work it. First of all, choose something that you are extremely familiar with to search for. I mean, don't go searching for people that you have no idea where they lived or who they were or anything like that. Choose your parents, your grandparents, somebody that you know has a substantial amount of stuff out there on the internet or should have. And the reason I say that is because you need to be able to gauge whether or not the full text search is going to produce anything that you haven't seen before or anything that you would probably have never seen. Okay, so is this going to help us find documents that we have never seen before? For example, a deed or a probate file that no one had ever bothered to find or had never had the opportunity to find. And then the other part of that would be, what if it just turns up the usual stuff? It gives you a census records, or it gives you the same list of records that you have in your source files on your FamilySearch family tree or on your other family tree on Ancestry or whatever. If that's all it's going to do is produce the same records, it doesn't seem like it would be much more help than it is to do a Google search or to do the search using FamilySearch or Ancestry or Find My Past or MyHeritage or whoever and their mechanisms of finding records. Here we go. So I use Henry Martin Tanner because I know that there is a substantial amount of information about him online. And by the way, I use him to test how accurate the chatbots are. So if I'm doing any of the chatbots from Copilot to Gemini to Claude to ChatGPT to whichever ones are out there, the first thing I do is do a search for Henry Martin Tanner on their chat and see what I get. Well, you're going to find out if you're doing any of those and you do what I'm doing, that you might get some really strange responses. And this is the basic question that's still open question. It probably won't be answered in the near future, but the open question is, can AI do what we call genealogical research? And the answer for everyone that I talk to that has anything to do with the genealogical community and AI says no. So right now we're using it to be a super search mechanism, a way to get into records, handwritten records that we had that were closed to us simply because of the tedious nature of having to go through thousands and thousands of records to look for one person. Okay, so this is kind of the key to what we're looking at here. So I chose this. This is a minimal amount of information about Henry Tanner. Name variations. If you look for Henry Tanner, if you look for Henry Martin Tanner, if you look for Henry M. Tanner, you find out that you'll get a different set of records. And if you knew that Henry Martin Tanner had signed his name as Henry M. Tanner on all of his official documents, then you would use that to look for that ancestor. So there's going to be a lot of other kinds of things that you have to bring to the table to get the information, to search for the information in a way that produces what you are looking for in using an AI search. And Joseph City, Arizona, was called Joseph City after 1924, began his Allen's Camp in 1876, and became St. Joseph in 1880, 90s, and then in 1924 they changed it to Joseph City. So you may have to use different names for the places over the year range that you're trying to look for. And you can use the advanced search trips. So if you don't want every Henry, every Martin, and every Tanner in the whole world, you can use quotation marks to put your name in the quotation marks. And then you can use some of the other suggestions here if you want to try those and see how they work with looking. And you might get a lot of responses. Now, this is the response I received to that search. I got 18,000 plus results. But the first ones here are Henry Martin Tanner in Joseph City. And they are my great grandfather. So these are the documents that were here. There's a death certificate. Well, death certificates are easy to find if you know where to look. And one place you can look is state of Arizona has a website where they have birth and death records, and it's free. And you can just go on there and search back in time. But the next record down there is a Navajo deed from Navajo County. And this is kind of interesting. So let's kind of see what you might be surprised to see one or more documents about your ancestors. And if you strike out, go back, try some alternative names, alternative places, whatever it is. In other words, you're doing a search and you're trying to guess what might have been on a document. And if you can guess what might have been on that document, then you're going to find the document. So basically, when I look at that document, I clicked on that deed document down there. The first thing I get from FamilySearch is a kind of grayed out image of the document itself with highlights and a notice that tells me the image attribution. Now, what is that? That tells me where they got the document. So they got it from the Arizona Department of Libraries, Archives, and Public Records in Arizona. Now, you might want to copy this and use this as part of your source when you attach this document to FamilySearch Family Tree, because that'll help you in perhaps in the future if you say, I want to find out what more there might have at the Department of Libraries, Archives, and Public Records. Now, over on the right-hand side, you're seeing a transcript of that whole document with the highlights of all of the individuals that are there on those documents. Those were the search terms I used. So all those came up, and you'll see that it was really Henry M. Tanner that was the one that I should have been searching for, because that's that. And there's a Henry H. Tanner and a lot of H.R. Tanner and some other people in there. And you may want to find out who all those people are. Okay, the next step is you may find more documents in the place where your document was found. So that's what's important to understand. That now you've been shown where there is at least one document, but you can assume, maybe not all the time, but in a lot of cases, like with Henry Tanner, you could probably assume that this was not the only deed he signed. And you could also assume that he might have signed and been involved in a lot of other kinds of documents. So if you start going down this 6,000 list of documents, you may find, when a reasonable list going down, that there's already some more documents that have been identified that you may want to look at. So now you have the document on the top, and you have on the document, and you have the original document, and the search terms that you used are highlighted. Now, this might help you if you look at how the document is and you look at the wording of the document. You may want to change your search terms and do another search, because you may find more documents than were available with this particular search. And so this becomes a process. It becomes the same type of process that we've been using, that you should have been using for a long time, using Google searches or any other search engine that you may be using, Edge or anything else you're using out there. So Chrome or Edge or any of those. Okay, so whatever you're looking, you think you're using to do searches on the internet, probably a lot of this is kind of the same tactics that you might use with those. This is the transcription. Question raised even before we started today was accuracy of the transcriptions. They're not going to be 100% accurate. There's going to be places where there's strikeouts, where there's smudges, where it's unreadable, and they can't resurrect what's not there. So this is going to be a little bit different. That, as I mentioned, there's a way on FamilySearch to get involved. Using that Get Involved program, you can become someone to review these and make corrections to the transcriptions that the records have made. And down at the bottom, it shows you a line of little tiny documents. And some of you may not be able to see that well on your screens, but those are the pages of that particular document. So you might want to search back and forth to see if there's any more documents than just this document that are part of what's happening here with this particular transaction. Then you're going to click up above. I'll go back. You can just see it up and right straight at the top, and I'm just blowing it up so you can see it. You can get the citation for the entire document. This is the citation, and you copy that, and you can copy that citation. And down at the bottom, there's a copy all. You just click that, go in and use this to paste that where it said, where did you get the document, on putting a source into FamilySearch or Ancestry or wherever else you want to put it in as a source. So this is the information you need to supply people to tell them where this particular image came from exactly. And you can use this. This is the citation for the source. In other words, this is the correct way to tell where you got that information. Then you can also attach it to the tree. This causes a little bit of more work on your part. As you get into it, you'll see that you can add all this information right here when you're attaching it. So if you've copied it, you can go back and copy it again if you didn't, and come back. But basically, you can copy and paste your information here, and this is what's going to be posted to the FamilySearch family tree with your information attached to your ancestor. So here's going to be a quick way to do it. and you can add it to your source box. At the bottom of the page, which did not show when I did the screenshots, there's a next box. So when you're ready and you put in the information that you want to put in, you go next, and then you're to the next part. But this will say attach it to the tree, and they're going to be asking for the person ID number. Okay. So backing up all the way back to the beginning, you'll need to know the ID number of the people you're searching for. And it's a good idea to have another window open with the FamilySearch.org family tree available to search for ID numbers of people that may pop up in the documents that you weren't expecting. This deed, for example, has Henry's wife, Eliza Tanner, her brother in here, her Parkinson brother. So there's going to be names that you aren't really searching for, but they are people in your line or relatives that you may or may not have ever thought of looking for. And you may be seeing whole family structures from a number of deeds where they're showing how all the people in the family are related. And so now you can attach the source, and they're going to give you some suggestions of people that may be in that document. So here's a whole bunch of Tanners that could have been people in that particular document. And you can add all those people in just by filling their check boxes, and then the program will add them add this document as a source to all the people that are mentioned in the document itself at once. And that's a very helpful part of this particular search. And so you're attaching it to the same thing, and you need to give a reason, and you can say you did an AI search and found this document, and it's actually Henry Martin Tanner. Okay, so what's the benefit here? The benefit here is that this deed is a document that I can give a almost 100% chance had never been seen by anyone in the Tanner family since Henry and Eliza signed it. Let's just think about that. Why? Why? Because the only way this document could have been discovered when looking for some of the names would be to look through all the documents in the collection, thousands of deeds, thousands and thousands of deeds. Okay, so let's say, oh, well, yeah, but what about the grantor grantee index? And you could have gone to the Navajo County recorder and you could have looked in their index and probably picked up all of the deeds for Henry Martin Tanner. The question is, who's done that? Who would have done that in the family? Who went out and got all these documents? In this particular case, Henry Tanner, my great-grandfather, one of his sons, who would be one of my uncles, he did an extensive, huge collection of Tanner records. None of these are in that collection. So these are documents that people would have to have thought, well, I wonder if Henry Tanner or your relative ever signed a deed. I wonder if he had to go to probate. I wonder if he has some kind of an indenture. What if he was, and we go through all the different kinds of records that eventually are going to be full text searched. And we think, how many of these documents would have ever happened? Now, the interesting thing about this is that as I've gone back through this, I've found deeds going back to the 1700s in Rhode Island, the same process in the Tanner family for documents that have never surfaced. And it's easy to tell when you get back that far because no one's ever attached them as a source. No one has ever referred to them. They're not referred to in the books that are written about these people. So these documents and things are things that are coming to light that you're going to see in some cases for the first time ever. And now you know where they are. So you can go look at that 900 pages if you want to go look for 900 pages. So always put in your name. The name's different. As I mentioned a moment ago, Henry M. Tanner was how he signed it, because when you go back to the deeds and do a search for Henry M. Tanner, you're finding more records, including voting registers and other things and places. One of the advantages of what happens here is that your other searches are being validated, but it may be solving some very, very complicated problems that you have had in trying to figure out the relationships of people. Because these records are going to be the ones that are now more easily searched than they were. And you're talking particularly about probate records, for example. Probate records can be scattered over many, many years of time. One of the longest probates I've seen took like 30 years to finish. And over 30 years, there were documents that were accumulated that that told the entire history of the family in essence for back many, many years. So these are the kinds of documents that are going to become, let's call it, more easily searched and more easily found. Here's one I could also say: Henry M. Tanner in St. Joseph, Apache County, Arizona, when it was before Navajo County became a county in the 1890s. Then you can search in the different place names. So I could look for Allen's Camp. And even though I did put in Allen's Camp, I didn't find anything, but I found a bunch of death records. Well, the Department of Health Division of Vital Statistics in Arizona has all these online, and they're easily obtainable. That doesn't mean that this isn't going to be a help in searching, because here we start to have them all in one place, and you can process them a lot easier than you could when you have to download it from the Arizona website and then upload it, and then you extract the information and whatever. So this just gets this stuff to you very much more quickly than you would have. And the results might be surprising. So for example, here is a death certificate for my grandmother, Eva Margaret Overson Tanner. And there's some other information in here, and it's very specific about when she died and how long that she'd had the illness. And I think that information is very helpful. As you get older, you may find that the doctors question you about, and you have certain things, like if you're diagnosed with cancer, a cancer specialist might sit there and ask you who in your family died of cancer. Or if you start to get diabetic, they may ask you who in your family had diabetes. And this may be extremely valuable information that you may have already had in your FamilySearch family tree and just hadn't focused on it. So this is my grandmother's death certificate. And then try a more general searches. How about if I just want to know all of the Tanners in Apache County, Arizona? And so I do a list, and I've got a couple of thousand names in there. And all I can say is going through this is going to turn up some very interesting situations and very interesting documents that perhaps no one has found previously. Now, this doesn't mean that these documents haven't been on FamilySearch or that they haven't been available. But if you think through it, if you think how many times, when is the last time you sat down and went through 3,000 probate documents? Okay, so that's kind of the answer. And the other answer is I spent whole weeks reading through the town records in New England, and I'm going to be overjoyed as those old handwritten town records are are now searchable, because I can make sure that I do get all of the Tanners out of those records and all of the mentions. This was one that came up that I hadn't seen before. Actually, I had the original documents from when my grandfather, this is my grandfather, was discharged from the Army. But back when I was doing some research on it, this would have been marvelous because I looked for this record for years, literally for years, and could not find any mention of when he went to the Army. In this case, obviously, I'm still doing what I said, and that was I'm searching for things that I know about my people. And the reason I know about this is because after spending a number of years searching for the documents, I found out that my father had them in a box and that his whole military history was there of his father, Roy Tanner. It's interesting to find that this particular record is not part of that because this is an Apache County record, not a record from the United States Army. So the United States Army records that I have are not the same as this document. And so there's additional information on this document that is not on the Army's documents. And I would just spend some time looking down through the documents that show up when you do this, when you do a search. Don't be so quick to say, oh, I didn't find it that time. Oh, I'm going to go on to something else. Just start looking down through to see what was found. And this was looking down a ways from the earlier documents, the searches that I did. And I found the articles of incorporation of the St. Joseph Irrigation Company. And my great-grandfather, Henry M. Tanner, was part of the corporation board. So this is information that I sort of vaguely knew, but I have never seen this document, and no one in all the documents I've gone through about my great-grandfather. So this is basically the kind of things that, and I'm okay. So I wouldn't even know how to look for this document because it comes up in miscellaneous records of Apache County, 1882 to 1893. So why would I go look at miscellaneous records for Apache County in 1882 to 1893 unless I was doing some really, really extensive research and decided to go through and pick up all the Tanners I could out of that, or all the Oversons or anybody else who might have been in Apache County. So these are the kinds of things that you're basically going to find. And the discoveries just go on and on. I mean, this was just looking down the same list of documents that showed up when it said 6,000 documents. These were some of the ones that were reasonably down in the document section. And here is a warranty deed, and it's another warranty deed between Henry and others. So use your imagination. And this is the South Kingston land record back in the 1700s. And that handwriting is not impossible. It's actually very good handwriting. And it's fairly easy for people who, like me, with years and years and years of experience to read, but it's nice to have the transcription. And if you don't read that well, then the transcription is going to save it for you and help you, I guess, learn how to read the writing a little more quickly. And this basically is a document that has never been seen in any of the records that any of the work that's been done on any of this family. And it identifies the Tanner brothers, the sons of William Tanner, plus the wife of Benjamin Tanner. So there were three brothers who were the sons of William Tanner: Nathan, Benjamin, and Francis. And this shows a relationship of the three and the wife of Benjamin, which confirms who we have for his wife. So this is the kind of thing that can change the whole perspective on certain ancestors. So from my perspective, handwriting recognition and full text search are going to just give you a flood of undiscovered documents. And we've already at the BYU library have found doing searches on full text with various of the volunteers and patrons that we're finding things that no one ever expected to see. So the challenge now is finding the search terms and using the names, dates, and places in ways that will bring out more and different documents. So that's kind of part of the process. And so think of all the dates, places, and names. So everything on here, use different names at each different times. And develop your own methodology. In other words, you have to learn how you want to use it, and you have to start seeing what kind of results you get. But it's also a good idea to sort of ask around, watch these videos that are going to continue to come out, and learn a little bit about what other people are saying. And I'm very anxious to talk to people and hear their way of approaching AI and what they're doing as individuals. So thanks for watching.
Thank you, Elder Tanner. A couple questions have come up. Can you do AI search for Germany and have handwriting translate to English?
Yes.
Great.
I've been doing that actually with using Google Translate because Google Translate will translate entire documents now. You got to go to Google Translate, the full website part of it where it comes up, not just fill it in when you get a search on it. And then you'll have the option of putting in an image or a document or an, whatever you kind of thing you want. And then they tell you which format it has to be in. But once you do that, then they do a very good job of transcribing whole documents. And this is the full text search here. It's trainable. And if you look through the number of documents that have been done, you'll see that there are documents from all over Europe now going in there too. Their goal is all the documents on FamilySearch will be done. All the handwritten documents will be run through this program.
Wonderful. One other question. Are you suggesting that we don't do FamilySearch through our name and family first, but rather go directly to lab, full text to minimize time?
No, I'm saying if you're going to do searches, you might as well start here. And then go to the historical records and then go to the catalog and then go to the images and then you're pretty much through at that point. But you've got to search every place on the website, not just here.